Bir iki dakika bekleyeyim. Hala gelenler var sanırım.
Başlayabiliriz hocam.
Başlayayım mı? Tamam.
Evet, evet.
Peki, öncelikle hoş geldiniz.
Okay, welcome first of all.
Güzel konferansın üçüncü oturumuna doğal
It is the
olarak
third
hoş
session of this nice
geldiniz.
conference.
Olacaktı. Maalesef ilk
We were going
konuşmamız,
to have two speakers.
Özge Ejder
Unfortunately, our first speaker, Rosemary Hancock, couldn't come due to her situation. So we are together with Özge Ejder. We will continue until 1 o'clock. First, we will listen to you in half an hour, and we will receive questions in the next half hour. The title of Özge's speech is Another Mirror Phase Narrative, Identity of Mortal Human with Inanimate Planet. Özge Ejder is a professor at the Department of Philosophy at Mimar Sinan University of Arts, working on aesthetics and continental philosophy. She's been focusing and publishing on death and problems. First of all, welcome to everybody. I would like to thank Zeynep Talay for accepting to moderate this session. Of course, I would like to thank the members of the organizing committee of Ege University for this conference. This is a conference that I learned to be about philosophy of nature, and I am joining from the perspective of philosophy of art, and I would like to thank the committee for accepting me. So I had the impression that the philosophy of nature was a bit restrictive concerning not accepting voices from other subdisciplines. Therefore, I would like to thank the organizing committee once again. As Zeynep Talay also said, that I will be presenting a speech titled Another Mirror Phase Narrative, Identity of Mortal Human and Inanimate Planet. I would like to say before beginning that beyond testing an idea here, I do not want to hold an authoritarian speech. So if there are any contradictions or complexities, if I cannot clearly and distinctly voice my arguments, I would like to apologize to you in advance. Donald Preziosi published an article in 2003, Art Museums and the Phantasms of Modernity, a book correction. In his first chapter, he referred to how things are haunting people. So as we go after objects, objects go after us, he says. And as an art historian, actually, we know this in a very Turkish Kanavis poetry, like this poem will come after you, and that poem is the poet. When we think about the impact of the object, maybe we will think that certain objects and places haunting us becomes a problem and question. We can identify ourselves only by looking at them and the places and the objects. Actually, the idea arose from where we say in the title, in the first identity experience of humans, there is the mirror phase conceptualization by Lacan. As you know, Lacan says from 6 months to 18 months, babies run into their own imagery in the mirror and they see that image as their own I, their own ego. So there are two reasons for this theoretical background that I have adopted. Actually, in the oncoming parts of my speech, I will try to elaborate on them, but let me remind you once again that this is a very liberal approach that I am adopting. as a theory. The first reason for picking this title, carrying it to the narrative, to my title, is Lacan says that babies calling her imagery I is actually a wrong identity, misidentity. Actually, the I and the imagery are not identical. Second, the baby renders independent herself from the mother. Now that the baby has an I, and this I attribute also has others that is outside of the I. I do not want to delve into the theory of Lacan, but I would say that concerning who, non-I, or who is not I, where do we actually make these distinctions is something that we need to criticize, because it is vital and irreversibly determining us since our babyhood. It seems that there's something wrong or something missing that we have been involved in. Of course, I see that I'm really pushing the limits of this metaphor and theory. In the end, all the problems concerning nature and humans, I do not want to employ Lacan's psychoanalysis theory totally. But in his theory, when he is having an theory of images, he also refers to symbols in the sense that in this misidentities that we construct, we are trying to fill in the faults, fill in the cracks. And these two different things, distinct things that we're trying to identify haunts us. So for the contemporary people, it leads to a certain crisis, which we can read as the symptoms of this misreading of identity. Yes, even though I won't be able to sustain the title totally, I hope that this provocation is something that you might pardon me. Aside from psychoanalysis, there's another aspect of provocation, which is artistry. To turn back to artistry, I said that Preziosi says, with the bodies that we grow inside, the worlds that we construct are actually more similar than we think, so that one is known in the recognized in the imagery of the other. But in the age that we're going through, the relationship of body, human, and planet can be thought this way. Maybe we identify first with the planet, asks Preziosi. So these are some questions that I think we can contemplate together. Philosophers take humans as having a nature, existing in nature, but actually it becomes a topic of knowing when we think about the planet. Actually, as a mortal existence, humans do not exist the same way others exist. So when we try to understand it from a very concrete point of view, we can say that we exist as a spatial coordinate existing in the earth, but this is different from existing just like others exist. So this is not a categorical being within, but of being familiarity, of being familiar with the things that we know, persons that we know, existing existentially on Earth. Ultimately, humans can be thought of as any existent body on Earth. So these conceptualizations are being used by Heidegger very frequently, and according to him, this is an inauthentic existence, humans and between others. So it is any existence which is inauthentic existence. The existence of humans meaning cannot attain a reality from this point of view, but the human being existentially existent on Earth or as any existence on Earth, and establishing a dialogue between the two is actually, in the words of Donna Haraway, concerning comrade species, this is actually, it means that humans might actually leave the steering wheel on the way to destroy itself. Actually, this might not sound like totally direct related, but philosophy is actually has handed everything to science concerning the search for humans as existential beings. But actually, Anthropocene might demand something, a different attitude from us. Science's reductionist attitudes and its negative emphasis shall be replaced as an equal interest in other beings. When we do this, then we also run into a series of women philosophers that is trespassing the area of philosopher. Karen Bergen, physics, Donna Haraway, biology. And there's also another philosopher whose name interpreter couldn't hear that refers to chemistry. So this understanding is using conceptual tools to reproduce hierarchy, and it has actually used this among humans as well. The transgressive approach of women philosophers to these tools actually says us something, tells us something. Actually, this is not the topic of this speech. I still wanted to refer to these women philosophers. On my own behalf, I would say that hopefully Lori Grün will also open up space for such discussions, and I'm looking forward to it. Continuing from the distinction of the world and earth. As you know, the world is the earth of philosophy. It has been actually reserved as the topic of science, at least on a conceptual framework. There's this distinction of philosophy and science handling it. But actually, the distinction between the world and earth, and one of the best distinctions is done by Heidegger in its origins of artworks. What merges Heidegger and Preziosi is techne, as another term. Preziosi says, from art history perspective, concerning the relations of humans and made objects, he problematizes art and techne. So the humans know themselves in the made-up things, some of which are is expressed itself as the phenomena. And in the antique world, there's culture, civilization, and history as we read the relationship between humans and human-made objects. So in these made objects, we are assigning meanings. Without any doubts, not everything that humans do are artworks, but creating and doing make humans humans, and its relationship with these made objects liberates humans. We can ask why humans are involved in doing art, but this human activity, which we call art, is indispensable even when it is not useful or beneficial. It has been an indispensable activity of humans since the very beginning. And actually, there is only one answer. There's no only one answer. This question cannot be consumable with one answer. But we also should say that a prehistoric person, by carving something on something, by transforming it, by changing it, it actually renders made and no longer renders it natural anymore. So in the face of nature, humans are distinct in terms of its relation with made objects. And the age that we're living in is actually referring to another meaning of tekne. In better words, the technological meaning of tekne. At the end of the day, tekne is shaping, technology is shaping our world today. So we understand more than what the society entails. Technology is actually framing our relations with the rest of the world, which is an instrumental context. Again, I will give reference to Heidegger concerning praxis, concretized praxis of tekne and art, bringing to light reality, the truth. And I will try to stick to Heidegger's position. And I can say that the Western intellectual history of 2,500 years, understanding of technology as a technique of science, even it has become very dominant, art and technologies collaboration should be taken more seriously, because what we say for art can be repeated for technology. As was quoted, Haraway was referred to in line with Cyborg Manifesto. And the speaker refers to another Heideggerian philosopher in relation to the existence of humans, that humans are originally formed and conditioned by technology, by this Heideggerian philosopher, concerning the redefinition of humans in relation to technology. Of course, the literature is not limited to Heidegger and the Heideggerian philosophy, whose name interpreter couldn't hear. Schiller, maybe she referred to, and Donna Haraway as well. And in their technical investigation, the technology meaning of tekne and how we can define humans over the technological meaning of tekne is underlined in the works of these philosophers. So humans recognize themselves through artworks as made objects, through a technical means, changes, touches, transforms, and this way disrupts the naturalness of the objects. This is how the humans get to recognize itself. Stigler says that humans and technology do not preserve their subjectivity, subjectness, and he will say that humans is a mortal being and individual being, and it can only be artwork, objects, and techniques that humans can realize itself as mortals. Stigler's this emphasis is very important, if you ask me, in terms of showing the relationship between art and technology, and in terms of referring to the presumable hierarchy between these fields, and actually being able to speak from where you can go beyond this hierarchy between these fields. Therefore, at some point of humanity, if we are to question, then we can arrive at these discussions. And also there, in terms of the special problems of what we are going through in this age. So we are experiencing this age as a series of crises where humans have made with their own hands these crises. We can claim this. Of course, this is something to be taken seriously. It's a very serious claim. And around this claim, there is a serious literature evolving around it. And what is being followed after a series of crises is actually Anthropocene. But actually, Anthropocene is only a name given by certain persons. And actually, instead of thinking itself as a crisis, it tends to be the cause of crisis. Because Anthropocene, especially concerning ecological problems, when it comes to the earth where we're living in, the air that we are breathing in, it is actually a provocative and explanatory concept concerning all of these aspects. And the philosopher would think that concepts that we use in a certain age shall be examined and criticized. In our relationship with the planet and the nature, actually, there is an urgency of criticizing our acts, our approaches. Ecosystems continue to carry the burden of human activity, and the global warming and climate change is becoming more and more of a reality. It is being called Anthropocene, the age of men, age of humans, which has become fashion. So officially we're living in Holocene, but London Geology Society, Geological Commission, quote unquote, believes that Anthropocene is to be taken into more consideration. Yesterday, dear Cem Kamusit also emphasized, and I had, if it's not going to be an unnecessary repetition on my side, I would like to repeat these once again, that this Anthropocene has more than one origin. Eugene Stormer was an ecologist. Paul Trupsen was a chemist. They started to use this concept independently of one another in the 1980s. So this word, this problem is being defined in reference to these two scientists. But actually, there are some claims that this term was used previously too. One of the most well-known reference concerning the field, concerning this term and the widespread thing of this term is the article in the Nature by Lucen. Whatever the origin of the term, the meaning is there. Biosphere, the Earth's crust's interactive platform of atmosphere has been changed irreversibly by humans. And the speed is going up so rapidly that it is impacting the temperatures of the seas and the land. And this way, the Earth's crust, the Earth, is losing its functionality. So some of them dated back to the Industrial Revolution, and some date back to 10,000 years ago, the Agricultural Revolution. But when we think of the radioactive pollution as well as the fossil fuel consumption, we can say that this has accelerated. So humans are trying to affirm themselves through their own activities, but beyond that, they have transformed themselves together with the earth. The biology, meteorology, and geology of the earth was impacted by humans in the meantime. And how, independently of how the sciences handle these issues, if we are to continue with our speech, because as yesterday, these were dealt with in their geological meanings, in the sense that when we leave these issues to geology, what can actually take place is something that Cem Kamusit really had very important warnings about yesterday, in yesterday's session. However, independently of these, conceptualization of Anthropocene in terms of social sciences, if we are to think of it in the provocative manner, then we can come up with some points, I think. Humans themselves are living in the planet where their existence is possible and their mortality is attributed to the planet's mortality. So we can think of an identity there. Then Anthropocene is a crisis of existence in that sense. Just as we have an indecision concerning how we're going to coexist together, how our destinies are merging together in an uncertainty, and how there is an aporia concerning our common future's uncertainty. Humans need to think about how they're coming and going once again. What is coming and what is going? Well, in this complexity,
olan bir şeyleri takip eden mi? Söz gelişi gezegeni belli şekillerde musallat olduğundan mı? Yoksa tam tersinden mi bahsedebileceğimiz de bir soru olarak önümüzde açılıyor. İnsanın kendi ölümlülüğüyle yüzleştiğinde içine girip çıktığına benzer bir taraftan kaygı, yaşamsal imkanlarını yeniden değerlendirme ve tekilliğini...
It's also similar to when we face with our mortality, to remember about one's individuality. On the other hand, rejection, objection, denial, and just continuing as anyone. So there are different types of ways of living. When we are speaking of Anthropocene, in this way we are speaking about facing with the eternity of this, and also it is showing that the death of the planet is also increasing the intensity of this crisis of existence. Actually, a relatively positive expression of this is possible by means of art, because when we are defining our relation with the planets in this way, but production of new ways of seeing, new narrations is enough. But Anthropocene, is an era, but maybe we can call it as an era or epoch. Also, it's the place where we are bringing together our connection with the planet. We have an aesthetic relation as well as other ways of relations. So the humanities trace on it, and the direct perception of human beings are related to this. Because of this and because of other reasons, the modern artists and curators wanted to give creative reactions, and they have a good position with this regard. In terms of the material they are using, they feel at home. But we should be able to say that our relation with art can be in different characters too. For example, one of the curators and art theorists which is theorizing this over Anthropocene is Nicolas Bourriot. When he was the curator of 2014 BA, he called it Great Acceleration, Art in Anthropocene. And in 2002, he wrote Relational Aesthetics, and he became one of the defenders of the speculative aesthetics. And his definition in Taipei Biennale is like this: humans and animals, plants and objects are in a cooperation, and this exhibition is a praise to them. Politicians, artists, and scientists have a way of cooperation, but there is another way of cooperation too, and this is possibility. And this is the cooperation which can change the world. This is what Bourriot says. As I said,
doğrudan antroposeni sorunsallaştıran ve ondan
there are
bahseden
people in the arts
tavırlar
sphere which is
oy vermenin
problematizing
diğer sebebi de
Anthropocene, and the reason for giving him as an example is
de tanıyor olmamız.
also the fact that we know him from his works in Turkey, 16th Istanbul Biennale. He was the curator of the Istanbul Biennale.
Bu Biennale hakim olan ve ona adını veren 7. kıta imgesi
The image of seventh continent, which gave the name to Istanbul Biennale, you would remember,
teması 7. kıtaydı.
was very important in Istanbul Biennale. This image
Çağının küresel ısınmayla birlikte
is actually
sonuçlarından biri olan
referring to Antarctic, referring to gorgeous Arctic pile in the middle of Pacific. It's not Antarctica, but it's a map. It's a mass 3.4 million square kilometers and 7 million tons. It's a plastic
bilimin ve siyasi eylemin
heap, a heap of plastics,
bir alandan kaynaklanıyor diye anlatıyor.
and it is.
Biennale o tema, o başlığı
He is telling why he called this name to this biennale.
devam edeceğim.
Let me quote from him. He says, "This image is well known for all of us. The oceans that are invisible because of industrial waste, the fish swimming between plastic bags and cotton buds are urging us to take this into account. It's a place where human and non-human beings together is just an undiscovered land. Once European settlers praised the New World, and this is the negative back stage of this. It's not a continent to be invaded, but actually, and this nation which is our work, and it is a place where we don't want to live. And in order to understand this, we need the anthropologist side of the artists. And I want actually this one, even if it is very familiar to you, but actually they want to see each artist as someone who is bringing news from other places. You maybe wrap up. It's as those who will be visiting the exhibition, we will be looking at the tribes created by this artist. And in this way, we can live ourselves to this. And we can understand the call of in this way, we can be the anthropologists of this new world. And Burios, there is an important art community which is attaching a great importance to Burios, using Anthropocene as a part of this. Climate change, global heating, extinction of species can be revealed through art, but this rationale of representation isn't just going beyond to exhibit ourselves. We can say that yesterday Jem mentioned danger, and we can say that we are having the same thing in art. When Anthropocene becomes the theme, this creates depression, fear, and other emotions. It creates a cathartic effect. In this way, we can just turn our ways once having the catharsis. But actually, we don't have new narrations based on this. Ballard, in her book related to Anthropocene, looks at two psychologists who are looking at the experiences of the artists who are interested in Anthropocene. And actually, they have found out 4 characteristics. One, an utopia, which is a comforting utopia. Second one, a challenging dystopia. 3, mediocre mythology. And 4, wonderful solutions. Except the wonderful solutions, the other artistic works have a very limited effect. And moreover, most of the artists who are a part of them are coming from Europe or North America. And global climate change is not only based on the historical continuity, but a novelty which is emphasizing this one. But in addition to this, it is not only based on this, but also related to marginalized human communities by the modern community. And human knows itself in what he or she does. Anthropocene is affecting this planet Earth, including the sky. And it is just as saying, I buy a baby to the mirror, we can use it as a part of this. Actually, of course, humans are responsible for what's happening to the planet, but we have a consciousness of responsibility to know ourselves in what we are doing. And actually, we are just looking at our own works, and it's a kind of narcissism. And this narcissism shows human beings as the sole responsible of the ecosystem change. When we are speaking about climate change, we think that we can rewind what we have done to the actually it makes invisible the humans and non-human actors. Actually, through our Earth, what is important is to make visible what is invisible. It's only possible by adjusting the clarity on the mirror. It's only possible by making visible the women's way of existence and by opening biodiversity. When we are speaking about humans, without interrogating what humans does, it's not enough to call this era as an Anthropocene. And the important way of this visibility passed through art, history of art, to describe what we see and to weave the ways of doing things in this world. And Ballard, in his or her book, tells us that art history gives us clues about energies, bodies, transformations, and other things. It's not a passive way of observing. And colonial capitalist and deterritorializing forces should be also a part of this narration. It's not only about taking the image on the mirror, but we should be able to show that things can be different from how they see, and we cannot get rid of this situation. I'd like to end my speech referring to a climate activist group. I'm aware that I really forced your patience, but just a few minutes more, because dear Karun Çekem already stated in her opening speech, climate activists are becoming very important in terms of the attacks to the famous works of art, from Van Gogh paintings to maiden with pearl earrings. They are pouring a sticky material in order to stick them to these works. Sometimes they are pouring soups or other liquids. First of all, we see that these works are not selected arbitrarily. I will not be going through them, but especially two of them attracted my attention. First of them is the Last Generation attack to Gustav Klimt's 1915 work, Life and Death. They have thrown a black dye. The work wasn't damaged, but the unions of museums acted in order to put glass protection before the arts. And another group opened a placard reading "No to Oil and Coal" by sticking themselves to Laocoon and his sons, because they said Laocoon and others also want to warn us related to the results of our evaluations today. From a subjective perspective, the first reaction in me was actually anger. Can't you find anywhere else to make this protest? But what could be more effective than this? Because the most important archive of the human image is art. Protesters have selected these artworks with this sensitivity, and it's not only an archive but also a live witnesshood. All these objects are speaking from the language of the planet. And actually this is what we mean, speaking of the universal language of art. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and sorry for speaking so long. Thank you, Özge. Yes, it was too long. That's why I didn't interrupt you, because we didn't have the first speaker, so we have some time. We will be going on with questions. You can raise your hands. I hope I can see. You can write to chat box. I see. I can look. Please write it to the chat box, because it's really hard to see them from here. You can write your questions to the chat box. Özge, actually the place you have left, couldn't you find anywhere else to demonstrate your reaction? So where could be else? I think, what was your second reaction? I think there couldn't be somewhere better. Actually, activists are especially underlining the fact that they are not damaging these artworks. When they are cleaned, they are coming to the previous position. But actually, I think this is not important either. Even there can be worse effects on the artworks. I can tolerate. I can bear with it. I can live with it. Another point, until the questions are coming, towards the end of your speech, I think it was Burial's criticism, or Ballad, I'm not sure. Actually, when we look at artworks, mostly we see the despair and fear in the weavers, but actually there are other ways of doing this without inciting fear or other thing in the weaver. But actually that wasn't I have said. The arts of work which is working on Anthropocene is especially emphasizing the situation of our planet. Anyone who is looking at this can see this, and actually what it creates is, of course, despair, sometimes denial, fear. But what I want to say is this mood has a cathartic effect at the end of the day. In our relation with the universe or the planet, we can experience these emotions through our works of art, and then we can leave it there. So we just give a certain type of reaction and continue our life. But there is an important issue emphasized by the two psychologists quoted by Ballard, which is these sorts of works have a characteristics of showing wonderful solutions. And this is what is especially effective on humans, because at the end of the day, it shows that we can do something about. We have created this problem, and maybe we can solve this problem. So it is promising a kind of hope. But we know that this is a misleading hope, and this is not what we need. This is what Ballard tells us, following these two psychologists, and I think I agree with this. Thank you. There's a question by Şükrü Argun. I think this is related to the liquids poured over the artworks. Maybe people can break their smartphones rather than these artistic works. Maybe it can be more useful for our planet. What is the more artistic thing? Is it breaking telephones? Yeah, I couldn't understand that clearly, but still, yes, I agree. I'm not in a position to suggest new strategies to the activists. Actually, I have a kind of thought. I think they are not speaking to people like me. Maybe it's a kind of, self-exaggeration, but still I think like this. But in addition to this, I think it's an apt choice to select these important works. They can continue to break their telephones too. No, I have no problem with this. But this effect created through activism has a share, is combating this transformatory power of art, because they are realizing these protests in spaces of art, and we have to think about this. We can bring together two questions here. The fact that artworks are relatively undefended targets. Do you think that this is a reason for selecting this? And do you think that this is really enough for structural change? Can it replace poetics?
Böyle savunmasız kılan cansız olmaları ya da en azından öyle
I think what make arts of work undefendable is that fact that they are not living beings, but actually planet is so.
Ki bizler için gezegen de öyle. Kendisini tıpkı bir sanat eserinin bulduğu savunmasız pozisyonda
And it's also quite defenseless. But let me add something to this. As I said,
savunmasızlık ve kırılganlık atfederek yaptığımız şey cansız olduklarının altını çizmekse de
even if we are underlining that they don't have a life,
ele alınamayacağını da düşünüyorum.
I think that works of art cannot be looked from the categories of non-living and living things.
Canlılığından pay almadığını düşünüyorum. Tam tersi.
I don't think that the life,
O nesnelerle
the
ilgili de aslında
world of objects do not take any share from
canlı hissediyor.
life. Actually, we feel alive
Sanat eserleri, müzeler,
thanks to these objects. So,
birer tanık olduklarını
I think that they are living witnesses, and humans of this age can also approach the world of objects from this perspective too. Thank you. Zerin Kurtoğlu, Professor Zerin has a question. Still, aren't they making the perpetrator invisible? If they had put salsa, some salsa or sauce over the Congress building, wouldn't it be more effective? Actually, they are doing this. They are sticking them to Congress, and a few years ago they did it in
böyle gerçek failler,
UK.
tırnak içinde gerçek faillere saldırmakla sanat eserlerine
Actually attacking to Congress building or
saldırmak demeyeyim ama müdahalede bulunmak diyelim belki.
attacking, maybe not attacking, but interfering
Seçerek,
with the works of art.
eylem gerçekleştirmelerini çok
And
birbirinden farklı düşünmüyorum.
they are not completely
Yani
unrelated according to me,
eserlerinin de insanın
because
ayna tuttuğunu
works of art is also
anlatmaya çalışmak.
mirroring the
Metni biraz
perpetration of humans.
kurgulamaya çalıştım.
That's how I try to write my
Yani insanların sanat eserlerinde gördükleri tam olarak
text.
fail olarak kendilerini
Actually, the humans are seeing themselves as the perpetrator in a work of art. That's why I try to understand. Actually, I will be repeating what I have answered. They are doing this too. Congress buildings and other public areas are also turned into spaces of activism. Thank you. It's 5 to 1 p.m. We can take a last question. But actually, there are many other questions. But at one point, we have to end. Last question by Özgür Soysal. I will be reading it through first. Thanks to us. I am remembering an anecdote related to Bansky. Bansky, to protest the West Bank wall, made some graffitis, and it attracted attention. But it is said that a Palestinian is objecting against Bansky. We want to demolish this wall, but you want to beautify it. So what kind of a role can take in the art, or the criteria related to this are discussed in modern art criticism?
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, in my speech, I didn't talk about beautiful at any point in my speech when I was referring to art or aesthetics, because contemporary art, especially in this century, and aesthetics is not the place where the aesthetic judgment is being formed by itself, in itself. In that sense, Palestinians' objection to Banksy's artwork by making the wall beautiful is a wrong way of blaming, actually. Just it was similar to an activist act, what Banksy did, that activists pointing to the witnessing of an artwork. With that gesture, Banksy is signaling to that wall at artwork, but generally speaking, he's executing art as a means of activism. And Banksy is repeating this gesture in many ways and places. So the subject does not have to do with what is beautiful anymore when it's about art, especially when it's about contemporary art, at least. It is not the situation, but then you would see. But what about the artworks in the museums? Can we say the same thing? No. Nobody would claim that Klimt's pictures are not beautiful, that they are not having an impact on us as beautiful. Nobody can say so. You can say, but if to repeat once again, the judgment of what is beautiful requires census commission among humans, and the census communists of today is actually bringing to us what is beautiful in very different reference points. So for art, let's put aside what is beautiful. We can actually put it aside, but then what creates its content is something else than what we traditionally think, perhaps, when I was referring to census communists, just because of the census communists, actually. This is so. Hopefully, I could answer your question. I think you did. I believe you did. Thank you very much. So we are concluding here. The next session will start at 2 o'clock Turkish time. Thank you very much, Özge Ejder, and thank you very much for your questions. There are so many thanks that I see here and some questions, but unfortunately, we won't be able to give floor to all the questions. I would like to thank all those who listened to me, asked questions, and were interested in this topic. And hopefully, again, I would like to thank Karun Çekem and the whole Department of Philosophy of Ege University once again. I would also like to thank you, Karun, Özge, and Zeynep. We would like to thank you. It was a beautiful speech. Thank you so much once again. Zeynep, also thank you for your moderating the session. See you on other days. Thank you.